Welcome to What's in Store with Carly and Chris, the show where we cover hot topics at the cross-section of retail and real estate. I'm Carly Iacono, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Ressa. Chris, lovely to see you. How's everything?
Everything's going well. How are you?
Good. No complaints?
Awesome.
Any big Thanksgiving plans in a few weeks?
Been hosting. Yeah. I when we were first starting our family, we were traveling to everybody for holidays, and sat down with my wife and I was like, we have to stop. This is insane. Like, cause like in the morning we were going here, in the afternoon we were going here, and dinner we were going here. It's like, and then when you have young children, my kids are 6 and 7. And so it starts to get really hectic. So we decided, let's have everyone come to us. And we started hosting, 5-6 years ago.
And that's not hectic.
It is hectic.
It's a different kind of hectic.
But it's different. It's very different. Travel's tough, right? So, yeah.
All right.
How about you?
I'm hosting as well. And the debate in our house is, do the Christmas decorations go up this weekend, or do we have to wait till after Thanksgiving? So, I mean, Thanksgiving's late this year. It's a tough call.
We have a lot of fall decor in our house right now.
Okay.
And so the day after Thanksgiving, we go and get our Christmas tree every year. So by Friday night, Black Friday, we'll have Christmas tree up. It'll be mostly decorated, but we won't do it before. We want to clean up from Thanksgiving, get the Thanksgiving decor out, and then bring in the holiday decor.
I do too, but that's only 3 weeks to enjoy all those outdoor lights, which are a real pain to put up.
So we're not big on the outdoor stuff.
Okay.
It's more the indoor decor.
Okay. I go big on both.
You go big on both.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we'll let you know.
Okay.
And, side note, we never got a picture of your family Halloween costume, and we're already talking about Christmas. So I feel like we need to add that to the bottom of the show just for.
I'll get some Halloween pics in.
Okay, good. All right, so we are actually here to talk about retail real estate, not just holidays. And today's topic is the three of the most compelling stories in retail right now. So we're going a little different, and we're going to cover 3 totally different topics that Chris and I think are really interesting and worth chatting about. So let's jump in.
Let's do it.
The first one is just sort of the state of retail mergers this past year. And we've all heard about Kroger Albertsons, which was on again, off again in litigation. I think it's still being discussed, but definitely in, I believe, complete blockage from the FTC. And now there's lawsuits going on. So that one is not old news, but we've all heard about it. But there was a recent one that you brought to my attention, which was just more interesting because it was a different vertical and kind of made you pause and go, why would that be necessary to block, right? Why is this such a big deal? And that was the Tapestry Capri Holdings merger. So some fashion brands, I think slightly different space. FTC disagreed with us. What are your thoughts on that? Why was that blocked?
So I think from a high level, if you go back to a couple episodes ago, one of my predictions for 2025 is that there's probably going to be more M&A deals.
Mm-hmm.
And because retail's strong, retailers are looking to grow, and it's challenging to grow store by store when space is so limited. And as interest rates are lowering, cost of capital, making those types of dynamics more interesting for a someone who's prepared to take on some ultra growth. So maybe you have to go a couple steps backwards before you go forward.
Okay.
I still believe that that's going to take place. But obviously, them going pencils down on this deal with Tapestry and Capri is, and maybe it comes back, who knows, to me was really eye-opening. They just went pencils down according to the news articles. And, and to your question, like why, it is clear that the current administration's FTC has a mandate to protect the consumer, which I think is great. However, I'm curious. I would love to be behind closed doors to see how they're getting to that they needed to take such a strong stand to put the deal folks in a position to put pencils down. Because one of the things that I know from real estate that's really frustrating is dead deal costs. And clearly on, we have development deals, pursuit costs on, already improved real estate. This is on another level. When you have two major, huge companies like this coming together, the deal costs are significant. And so to have dead deal costs in something that seemingly was going to help all those individual brands, because Tapestry is Coach and Kate Spade, and Capri is Versace, and Michael Kors and Jimmy Choo. And I was excited to see what they could do with all that for the consumer, because I thought these are some iconic brands with some real cachet that they could do both on a retail consumer level and a real estate level, some interesting things. And so we'll see where it goes.
I think we know where it's going already, but you think it'll be appealed?
I don't know that the courts didn't. It's over. I think they went pencils down and stopped fighting. Is what I think happened. But on a go forward in that specific scenario, maybe people are like, it's just, we're not going to chase, throw good money after bad anymore, and the debt deal costs are just going to be that. But it is clear to me there's some interesting opportunities in the M&A space for retail that I think is going to enhance retail real estate. And if rates continue to come down, space remains limited, which it's hard to see a place where it doesn't. I think we're going to see some interesting opportunities, and I think it will help retail real estate.
So the mindset of why this was blocked, I thought, was a little different from what we could read. Obviously, we don't have the full story, not being part of the FTC, but I think it was a little different than, say, like the Tempur-Pedic mattress firm merger that was blocked also this year. Like that one was a full supply chain solution, right? You have the manufacturer with Tempur-Pedic, Sealy, all the way down to mattress firm having a really, really strong retail presence. So I don't necessarily think that was a bad move for them, but the FTC said you're controlling too many pieces of this supply chain. So we don't want that.
But yet, there's other examples where vertically integrated companies, have gotten it through, right? The one that I think of that I thought was really interesting is when CVS bought Aetna.
Right.
So the insurer down to the prescriptions in the retail store.
Exactly.
Which to me, I think is probably more impactful to the everyday consumer, right?
Exactly.
So
maybe it's administration.
We'll see what happens.
A possibility.
I would think, there's a lot of, obviously, the Trump administration has talked about deregulation.
Mm-hmm.
And if some deregulation starts to happen, maybe that's also a new catalyst, lower rates, lack of space, and new administration. Those three things converging, hopefully, lets opportunities and deals happen.
Because it can be net positive for the consumer, I feel. To your point, that let's go back to the example with the Tapestry. Those brands are different, but could be synergistic.
Yeah, I think that one of the mandates for the FTC is pricing power,
right,
more than innovation, right? And I look at it from what could be, and what could come, and what could they do. And I think one of the things is just pricing power is one of the huge pieces.
And I think for that, they were saying there was too much control in the accessible luxury leather handbag space. It was very specific.
It was.
Which is interesting. So, maybe there needs to be a separation on that part of the business and not a full block, but who knows? Anyway, very interesting. I think your point that it's regulation versus innovation is an interesting one, and we'll have to see what the next administration does.
We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah.
But I don't think dead deal costs are good for the economy.
It's not good for anybody.
Right. And so that piece is hopefully we can limit those.
Of course. And then how much do you fight it as a
Yeah,
company, right? Is this sort of a lesson that every other company looks to and goes, ugh, we don't want to end up like that. We don't want to spend all this money. It's probably not worth trying. Or maybe that gets priced in now when you're looking at a merger. Like, what's the downside if this doesn't go through? What's our risk in dead deal costs?
yeah,
So, definitely something to keep an eye on.
sure.
All right, let's move on to number 2, completely different. And this is Amazon bringing back its Amazon Fresh. Now, it never went away completely, but there was a lot of stores that were built that never opened. And it seemed like they were testing some technologies, their just walk out technology that wasn't maybe as much of a win as they'd hoped. And now we see Amazon Fresh 2.0, or it's probably 5.0 at this point, and an increased focus on bricks and mortar grocery from Amazon. So, what does that mean to you for the space overall? What does that mean for other
So
grocers?
the first thing I think about is like, I think just generally how powerful of an investment grocery anchored real estate is. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. And the reason I say that is, you know, in business literature, right, everyone talks about like you have to spend some money to try new things, fail, and then cut it off and move on. Right. That's in business books all over. And companies struggle with that because like how many things, what percentage of my P&L should I devote to this innovation to try new things that most likely are going to fail, but hopefully I hit the one jackpot that ends up being the lottery ticket. And Amazon was the poster child of always trying and innovating
Mhm.
and doing these new things. And if it didn't work, they weren't scared to just go, we're going to move on and go. But this one, they came out of the gates and it wasn't working how they wanted. They went back and retooled, and they're coming back out of the gates hot and really pushing on the grocery end. So to me, that was like, well, one, how powerful to the grocery anchored real estate investment community. Two, um, I'm sure there's going to be some, you know, interesting, moves by other grocers in reaction to this, and clearly increased competition for grocery. Now, they're not of scale like some of these other grocers that we talk about yet, but uh, a powerful statement to me, in my opinion.
And I think it's just a reminder to take them seriously in every vertical, right? We're like, oh, they don't have grocery down. Of course, they have Whole Foods, but the discount grocery, the high tech, like that didn't work. They're out. I would say never count them out, right? Because the
Sure.
story is innovation, try again, and then really pay attention because when they get it right, that's when they scale.
Yeah.
And they're just still, I think they're testing, they're tweaking, and we should all pay attention in the industry that if this latest iteration takes off, we're going to see a proliferation. It's my guess.
And if you haven't seen, there's a lot of news articles where you can actually look at the stuff they've done in the store
Right.
and the changes that they've made and whatnot. So, um, I think it's interesting for the grocery sector, both on the retail side and the real estate side. So we'll see what comes from it, but I am intrigued for sure.
And one of my takeaways from it was that they're finding the right balance between technology and customer experience. It's like everything can't be super high tech, cold, and just about efficiency and pricing. But yet everything also can't be about just a warm experience and, just focused on how you feel when you're in the store. It's got to be this blend, which they're trying to hit right. I think their first iteration was the walkout technology, right? That they've now abandoned, which is interesting. Less people in the store, no greeters, and now they're saying, okay, we need that human touch element with the technology layered on. Maybe that's the sweet point for where we are as a society. So I think finding that balance of efficiency, technology, and consumer experience is something that all retailers are kind of dabbling with right now, and this could be a really good mix of the two for them.
I got a question for you. So let's say 10 years down the road, there's hundreds of these around the country. Do they only sell groceries in those stores?
Mm. I no, I think no. There'll be some other complementary products, but if you diversify too much, do you become a Walmart, a Target? Do you lose your brand identity? I think that there's a lane there, right? You could be grocery, like Aldi, for example. The last time I was in an Aldi, it was grocery around the perimeter and then lots of really odd to me items in the middle. They were like slippers and I don't know, random stuff in the middle that clearly works from a product mix for them. I couldn't figure out how they come up with the items, but it worked, or they wouldn't be doing it. So I think with Amazon, they're going to have something that they sell that appeals to those consumers they've targeted who shop in Whole Foods or Amazon Fresh, assuming they're slightly different. But it can't, I don't think it becomes a diversified big box retailer.
Okay.
That's my prediction for 10 years from now. We'll watch this and you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's way off. I don't know. What do you think? What's your prediction?
I think that there's, if you look, the last mile is, no one's conquered this yet. And one of the reasons is the last mile is like, for those who don't know, is not actually a mile from consumer households. It's much, much further than that out. And so the grocery anchored real estate that they're going into, or real estate that's getting converted into grocery anchored real estate that they've gone into, is now another distribution point. And they're obviously today focused on food and grocery, but I would think that someone like them, they might find additional utility out of the box long term.
But that doesn't necessarily need to be consumer facing. That could be on the site in the back end. If it's distribution focused, why does that need to be part of the store?
I'm not saying it's distribution focused. I'm saying it could be anything. I'm just saying the utility of the box, because the most in-demand real estate is the real estate that's closest to the consumer, and the real estate closest to the consumer is retail real estate, and they're attacking that.
I actually thought years ago when they bought Whole Foods, that was one of the main reasons they bought Whole Foods, was the locations and the markets that they were immediately accessing.
So one of the things with Whole Foods is a lot of their locations are super regionally focused, right? So they're not all in the neighborhood. Some of them are because the density allows for it. But there are some Whole Foods locations that are very regionally focused, whereas most traditional supermarkets are much more are further in and closer to the consumer, especially in suburbs in America.
I still think it was a play to get into those markets, and maybe it will be distribution points later. Maybe they did it to learn about grocery. Probably all of the above.
Probably.
Right? They're behind the scenes going, we've got it all, right? You're looking at one piece, but really, we've got a lot in the work. So anyway, Amazon Fresh, very interesting, opening back up. I think we'll see them with a vengeance, expanding, but that is all speculation.
Yes.
So, TBD. Okay, the last thing we are covering on W.H. Smith and their push into airport transportation focused retail. Now, this is interesting because they have a bricks and mortar presence in Europe that's very strong. They have airport locations. They have train stations. They have locations in resorts. But the one thing that they've pulled out of their global business model is U.S. airport expansion. They're betting big on this. I think it was something like another 250 stores by 2028.
Yeah.
Rounding. Why do you think that is? What's attractive about airports?
That's why I was so taken back by the press release, right? Because they like another 250 locations. That's a lot of airports.
A lot of airports.
And so my brain starts thinking like, is that just the first thing? Is that just a play that they think that retail in American airports is weak? Okay. I would think it would have to be more than that. I would think they have a prediction on travel.
Mm-hmm.
They have a prediction on just the nature of transit-oriented retail and consumer spending in a transit-oriented environment. And so what does that say for like locations in touristy areas? What does that say for other transit real estate-oriented areas? And I think this is really interesting because I'm trying to think of the last retailer that I read a press release about in any publication that was coming out and saying they're expanding in train stations and
Right.
airports in America. Like I haven't seen that. In fact, a lot of the airports, at least especially in the tri-state, have a significant amount of like these, what I'll call, they're not, but these local brands that aren't actually outside of airports. They're not nationalized. They're like, they appear to be local brands, but really it's like one company is ideating all these different brands to go into the airport. If you go to LaGuardia or you go to Newark and you go to any of these airports. And so the fact that you have this like global brand that is like, we're coming and we're making a big public announcement. We want to open up a ton of stores in US or North American airports. I was like, wow, that is so interesting. And what does that really mean? What are they seeing? Why is that? Why is now the time to do that? It's probably some combination that they think they have a interesting mousetrap for retail in American airports that's not being delivered, or they could be more competitive. It's probably their prediction on what's going to happen in American travel and North American travel. It's probably a combination, but I found it super interesting because I haven't read a lot about this, and it's just another like retail real estate is hot. People are like trying to find any way to open up in retail real estate. And no matter if we have some bankruptcies and more closures, most of those are just either prunings or legacy brands that probably maybe, really needed to address their balance sheet. We still have this plethora of new concepts and people trying to open up in
Anywhere
a variety of places in retail real estate.
I wonder if it has something to do with the margins that they're getting in airports. I mean, whenever I'm in the airport and have time to kill and end up browsing through the stores, the prices I find always shocking. Everything's so much more expensive in the airport. Now, I don't know how much of that goes back to the retailer or if there are certain fees they have to pay to be in the airport. So prices are high, right? Prices are higher because of that. But I wonder if margins and having a captive audience is some piece of that puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a bottle of water in an airport is not inexpensive,
right?
On a relative basis. So,
and perhaps that translates all the way through books and bags or whatever, right?
Yeah, for sure. It does. Yeah.
They're going to be selling. But the fact that they've found a way to pay the airport fees, create a compelling product mix, and grab more of the market share, at least they think they can, is very interesting.
And I don't think that's changed. I used to, when I think I've gotten one for everywhere. I used to get my wife a hoodie from every place that I went to from an airport in the airport, just, and it would say like
whatever
Cleveland.
City.
Yeah, it would say. And so my wife has a pretty robust hoodie collection.
It. Yeah.
But those are not cheap when you go to the airport and buy
like
those.
$65. It should be $20.
Yeah, it's
right?
not inexpensive for one of the hoodies you find in the airport.
I actually like to, similarly, I buy a Christmas ornament everywhere I go. So I remember the trip, not for every work trip, but for every personal trip. And number one, they're kind of hard to find in certain airports, but then in others, you can find them everywhere. And they're always at least $20 for a plastic whatever, right? Where it should be like $5. So that's real. I feel it. I feel it too.
There was one hoodie that I used Cleveland because the only hoodie in there, all it said was, "This is my favorite Cleveland sweatshirt." And so I got that for my wife, and I was like, this is an interesting one. Like,
she's like, "Thanks, honey. This is beautiful."
This is interesting. So that Christmas, I got another hoodie that I ordered in custom, and it says, "This is my second favorite Cleveland sweatshirt." So
at least that was funny. Yes. That was worth the $65 that you probably paid for it.
Right.
So interesting. Well, I'm excited to pop into one of those when they do open and see what their product mix is like, and see if we feel like it's really going to take off like they are projecting. So,
yes.
Interesting. Well, that was today's kind of retail roundup. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
You too.
And for everyone listening, we appreciate you tuning in. As always, that was What's in Store with Carly and Chris, and we will see you again next month. Have a great day, everyone.